Whether or not you're a fan of the YouTube sensation sailing vlogs that are out there, I think it's probably pretty hard to argue that they're not a force out there. So, are they relevant? And actually, does that even matter? Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley podcast. I'm actually talking about how we get our information and what's good about the sources of inspiration we find. Today's episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by Northwest Explorations. Are you looking for a one-stop shop for all your Pacific Northwest cruising needs? Northwest Explorations offers bareboat charters, guided flotillas, powerboat training, service of your vessel, detailing of your vessel, and even brokerage. They're located on both the Washington coast and on Vancouver Island, so you're covered no matter what side of the border you're on. Visit nwexplorations.com to learn more. Inspiration is a funny thing. I know for me, even talking about this Pacific Northwest cruising needs and Northwest explorations makes me want to go up to the Pacific Northwest to go cruising. That's not apt to happen at any time soon, but it's still kind of fun to dream. Is a dream the same thing as an inspiration? I don't know. Probably you could argue either way. Sort of like whether the number of YouTube sailing celebrities out there these days is a good thing or bad. The Annapolis Boat Show is so excited about YouTube sailing people that they actually had a whole booth this year and invited the people attending and manning that booth to send out some free information and some discounts to their listeners or watchers. I'm not sure what to call it when you are paying attention to YouTube sailing vlogs. And it sometimes sparks a conversation. Is it really a good thing, this rise of YouTube and the attendant glossy depiction of life on board? I mean, when you're making videos and earning some money from it, probably you're not going to show all the kind of boring, mundane, day-to-day aspects of life as a cruiser that most of us love. But how did these YouTubers, how did they get their start? And is that generation the ones who sailed before the age of blogs and videos, the cruisers who wrote the original books and magazine articles, or even just plain went sailing around and talked to their friends and family about it? Is that generation of cruisers still relevant? And I'm not particularly sure that I'm fond of the term relevant. But what I really want to talk about or think about is, how does anybody learn and grow except by what's been done before? Does it matter if you don't have any idea who Lynn and Larry Pardee are, if you know about the idea of going simple and going now? Does it matter if you have no idea who Dan Spur is? If you subscribe to Practical Sailor, which I think he started, or certainly was one of the original editors of it. What happens if you don't even know who Joshua Slocum is, but you like the idea of going cruising, and did you know that he was one of the first? Does it matter? Not really. Nobody does anything in a vacuum. We're all inspired by someone or something, even if we don't recognize it as inspiration. And that chain continues along, right? Just because you can't see the beginning doesn't mean that it's not critical, and it doesn't mean that it should be disparaged later on. Regardless of whether you think the YouTube sailing people are worth watching or not, regardless of whether you like somebody more than somebody else, or you've never heard of YouTube, or you've never seen any of them, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that they're there. I will argue that if they spark curiosity and interest in this lifestyle that we love so much, maybe it's that they get people to see cruising as a legitimate way of life. Yes, even if they're leaving out aspects of reality in the way that they share their lives. I think we're all pretty guilty of putting our worlds through rosy glasses. Every single one of us is inspired by somebody. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and it doesn't matter if you don't know if they're a giant or they're not a giant to you. We're standing on our own giants and reaching for the stars in the best way that we can. Just because somebody is a giant to me and not to you, or because somebody's a giant to you and not to me, it doesn't mean that they're not important. It's kind of cool hearing about other people's giants because, wow, I love being inspired by lots and lots of people. I can't wait to share an anchorage with you and be inspired by the things that you have done in this cruising life of ours. Thank you so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. I hope you have had the most fantastic holiday season and that you're ready for 2022 to be totally spectacular. Have the most wonderful week.